Hello again, and welcome to Cybersecurity TV. This is our Thought Leader series, and today we have a special treat. I'm coming to you under my AFCEA hat as chair of the Homeland Security Committee. And today I have with me Rear Admiral Jay Vann. He's the commander of the U.S. Coast Guard Cyber Command. Jay, welcome to Cybersecurity TV.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
So Jay has a very interesting background. First, he went to our nemesis over at Coast Guard Academy, and he has a long career in the U.S. Coast Guard. Before he came to the Cyber Command, he was at the Deputy Commander of the U.S. Coast Guard Personnel Service Center, and he held various jobs throughout the Coast Guard. He met up with us at Homeland Security down in Atlanta in our last conference, where we had a Jack Voltaic exercise that looked at both physical and logical security requirements, and looked at state, local, and federal government interaction. And he was impressed, I guess, and so I'm going to let him talk about that. What I'd like to know, Jay, is what was it in Atlanta that you saw that encouraged you to want us to do more, and specifically port exercises?
Sure. Thanks, Dan. So, I see AFCEA as a convener of people, primarily bringing together government and industry to match capabilities and services with government needs. Or further industry needs. And I attended the Homeland Security Conference in Atlanta to speak. Really, I think the purpose being to inform the gathered industry and AFCEA members about what was going on in CG Cyber, an update, what the Coast Guard was doing in cyberspace. And I went down a day early. I heard there was a tabletop exercise that was going to be done that had a cyber element to it. And what I observed was a really well put together tabletop cyber exercise that involved federal, state, local, industry, community partners from around the city of Atlanta and nearby communities. And it was a multi-threat exercise, not just cyber, but multiple threats. It was designed around a significant event like an Olympics, or it was a large sports event. But again, multiple threats. There was a cyber component. There were impacts on critical infrastructure from other vectors. And it was handled, again, as a tabletop exercise with a professional facilitator that was in town, who I believe AFCEA brought from FEMA. And what it really did, again, was convene this group of people who, in my opinion, ought to get together often to talk about the kinds of things that can happen in a city or in a region that could disrupt life. And that's exactly what was done. The facilitator walked through injecting conditions, kind of moving the scenario along, asking questions of the players, really teasing out participation and input from each of the different players. Dawned on me that something similar to that, but in a port environment, would add some additional complexities that I think would be really good for the partners that would come together in a port environment to test themselves on. And so again, think a large port city, think government entities, think in the industry that comes together in a port, particularly the transportation sector, with not only the shipping that comes in and out of the port, but the rail heads and trucking heads, and just, it's such a critical node in our supply chain. Potential military components, if it's a port in which there are either naval assets or pre-positioned or military outload activities that go on. And so really dawned on me that we already exercise security in ports, and we're beginning to exercise cybersecurity in ports, but this format and AFCEA's ability to bring those groups together and you know, with some emphasis on the technology piece, I thought was a real opportunity. So we've kind of started looking into could we maybe work together to do that.
Right, and it was a very good exercise. We had a really good facilitator, as you said, and we talked with your team and up at Cyber Command, and we started planning an event in June in Baltimore, which obviously had some of its own problems and is actually a good example of things happen, right? And I think we talked before our interview here that we have to think outside the box. We got to think worst case scenarios. We got to try to imagine the unimaginable. I think that's was your term. And being a maritime fellow myself, and you know, trying to get not only the Homeland Security Committee, but AFCEA overall to kind of focus in that area. Because we always talk about supply chain security, but I don't know that everybody understands what that means holistically. And many times it starts at the port, and as you said, we got the trucks, we got the rails. It's a very big undertaking. So can you share a little bit of what your insight, what you know, and maybe, you know, what the short-term lessons learned are from Baltimore?
Sure. So obviously leadership in the Coast Guard's paying close attention to what's going on in Baltimore. I had the opportunity just last week to be up there to get an overview of the operations that we're conducting there, and then the partners we're working with. I'm slated in my next job to become a field commander and actually be responsible for the region that includes Baltimore. So very interested in the operations there. Really, this is exactly the example that I was poking at in my answer about what do you get from this type of an exercise. Now, at the moment, no reason to believe that there were any cyber effects that played a part in this. The entire incident is under multiple investigations. Mm-hmm. Coast Guard Cyber Command has provided cyber expertise to the Coast Guard's Marine Board of Investigation, but again, at this point, you know, we don't know of any cyber factors. We will all learn as the results of the various investigations are released, you know, what were the causative factors. But I think what the outcome, the effect in the physical domain produced, boy, there's a lot of lessons to be learned, right? This was a multimodal effect. We had a vessel, which we have security, you know, concerns about. We have an interstate and a bridge, which clearly there are security concerns, and it's an integral part of that supply chain you mentioned. So not only the movement of the containers on the vessel, the movement of trucking on that bridge, the port facilities themselves that really have had to shut down as a result of, at least initially, no movement in and out of the port. That affects rail and trucking that comes in and out of Baltimore. And then labor and the effects of all of those longshoremen and the various folks connected to shipping in Baltimore being affected by the shutdown of the port. You know, the Marine Transportation System, as we call it in the Coast Guard, the MTS, is responsible for the movement of over 90% of all goods that come in and out of this country. That's a significant number. Anybody watching this and us, if we look around the room and we look at the things we see and the clothes we're wearing and the objects we're touching and using, just about all of it at some point has made a trip by water and come through one of the 360 some odd U.S. ports. And so we see what really could be you know, defined as a single incident, although significant, having incredible ripple effects, not only in Baltimore, but then the other ports and the other parts of the transportation system that have had to adapt to absorb what we learned. From a response perspective, I think the Coast Guard and other agencies we're working with there, the Army Corps of Engineers, the state of Maryland, the city of Baltimore, the industry itself, the various organizations that are playing a part in the response. every time we have one of these large events, you know, we learn lessons. I think the biggest one, and the one I noticed when I was visiting up there, is that we're all working together. There is a unified command set up. So aside from the investigations that are going on, the National Transportation Safety Board, the Coast Guard investigation now, an FBI criminal investigation, there is also a significant response effort going on, and that is very much a cooperative effort. And as you might imagine, all the organizations around the table, whatever subject matter expertise is required, and in the case that it was a technology effect, we would have all the right people there participating in ensuring that the system recovered and built in resilience and the like, so that another event like that couldn't happen. But lots of lessons to be learned.
Yeah. One of the things we hope to do with AFCEA and with your folks at the Coast Guard and NTSB, et cetera, is to kind of get to the point where we can do an after-action breakout. You know, some of the things, you know, people, and like you said earlier, you know, you got to think outside of the box. You got to look beyond what your little responsibility is, because right now, the bridge, that was one of the major hazmat travel routes, and now we got to go all the way around Baltimore, and there's a lot of congestion problems and stuff like that. We have a huge military sea lift command presence in Baltimore Harbor, and if we had to facilitate or use those vessels right now and send them to, you know, help the troops and supply the troops, we'd have a problem. And we're already short. We have a very meager, small maritime industry right now, American flag, and you know, in time of conflict, we got to rely on our American flags and our American seamen. So, do you have any other reasons or understanding or so that you can share with people on specifically what kinds of things do you want to get out of these port exercises? Because as I understand it, we're going to try to do across the country, at least start with the East Coast. Baltimore now has been postponed. We're thinking, because we have another conference in Atlanta coming up in November, we're thinking maybe Savannah, maybe something there, and then you're going to own from Portsmouth up? Is that how it is?
Yeah, so my new area of operations really goes from North Carolina up through New Jersey and all the ports inclusive there. But again, 360 plus ports around the country. Coast Guard captains of the port are already working with the port partners, the industry and ports, to do exercises. I think the vision here is, you know, does AFCEA bring, again, that convener power, particularly in places where AFCEA is already gathering, you know, many players, to take advantage of that opportunity and maybe expand to a bigger group than what a local captain of the port might convene when they exercise, and to bring, again, what I saw was a very complete, well put together exercise. So I just think there's an opportunity there. Yeah.
Right. And we're going to try, and as we did in Atlanta, we looked at both physical and logical threats. From the Cyber Command point of view, are there any particular threats that are glaring right now, things that you have come across or the command has come across that they're particularly concerned about and they want to address?
Yes, and I'm going to make a shameless pitch for one of our products here that I didn't warn you about. But Coast Guard Cyber Command releases an annual report called the Sea Time Report, or Cyber Threats and Insights in the Marine Environment. We just released our 2023 report a little bit ago, and it gets at this very thing. What are the threats out there? What are the recommendations we make to industry and partners in a port, municipalities, local governments, what have you? What actions can they take to harden their systems to defend against these threats? And really, I would say the threats break down into a couple different groups. Again, we talked about the significance of the marine transportation system, that part of American critical infrastructure. Again, it's the port complex, it's the the government and the commercial partners that work there. It's the vessels that call on the port. It's the other logistics heads, the rail, the trucking, you name it. It's all of those factors. You know, what we get at is that this is a port, particularly a large port. Again, to your point, some with military resources in the port. They are a lucrative target. So the first group of threats that we are mindful of and we see repeatedly are ransomware actors that are out there really looking to make a buck. And when you look at a port and all of the things that could be accomplished by disrupting trade, there's the potential for real lucrative malicious activity there. So that's kind of a first group is those out to make a dollar. The next group I would say that we're seeing on occasion, and this gets into that military prepositioning and the movement of military equipment, are the activist groups or hacktivist groups that, again, we've seen it more in the physical domain, but those same actors are in cyberspace looking to use that medium to cause disruption of the nation's work to project military power or to support militaries in allied and partner nations. And then the third, really the most sophisticated and the most worrisome, are the nation-state actors that are driving toward a geostrategic advantage, right? So these are adversary nations that are looking to get into critical infrastructure. Really what we're seeing is into operational technology to be able to then, at a time of their choosing in the future, assume we move along a spectrum towards, into competition and on potentially to crisis and conflict, the ability to then disrupt our supply chain, disrupt our power projection, disrupt that line that goes from fort to port overseas to support our troops, as you said. So I would say those are the three categories. Our report annually, and then other products we provide, those we work with, get at who are the threat actors, and actually get into what type of techniques do they use, and go a little bit more in depth in the technical part of what to look for and how to protect against it.
Is this report public, or is there a private?
It is. It is available to anybody who wants it. The Coast Guard Cyber Command's Maritime Cyber Readiness Branch has a resource page that's available to the public. They can get the report there. We share it with the port partners we work with throughout the country. And then there are, again, I guess I would offer that there are these same actors that I just mentioned that are really not just playing in the port, not just present in the port, but really everywhere. And so I would tell you it's consistent, that it's those looking to make a buck, those looking to disrupt society, and those looking to get a military advantage. It's happening elsewhere, and it's certainly the same in the port, and the port is a lucrative target.
Great. So one of the aspirations for our exercises here at the ports is to memorialize this. We're hoping we're going to be able to capture this in video. We have a great way of storing a great database of this information. So we're not going to be able to do every port necessarily. We're not going to be able to do many ports over a single year. It's a big undertaking. How do you see other ports taking advantage of what we do in this coming, let's say, 12 to 18 months? So maybe we can do 3 ports. How would other ports be able to take advantage of that memorialization, view the exercises, maybe view the lessons learned out of this exercises? What do you think?
So, just so happens that Coast Guard captains of the port convene groups called Area Maritime Security Committees. These groups get together, they stay in touch, they talk about security. They're increasingly developing cyber subcommittees that are focused on cyber security in the port. I could see these groups leveraging that kind of a resource to essentially, watch or follow along an exercise if they were not able to host one themselves. It's just like the report we put out. It's just like the many products that not only the Coast Guard, but CISA, other government entities companies that work in the cybersecurity space that we make available to people. So I absolutely could see those types of resources not only being available to the individual players, but through our captains of the port and their area maritime security committees and cyber subcommittees. Here's a resource you can take a look at, whether you get together and you observe the exercise and talk through it. It's as if they could do their own tabletop exercise breaking down that type of a memorialized resource, or they could take it and use it for themselves, each individual entity. But I see potential there as well.
Absolutely, and so do we. I think, especially as we transition from those of us that grew up pre-internet to those of us that have grown up post-internet, and I have 3 boys, all in their 30s. They learn and they absorb differently than we did, right? We studied more on paper and stuff like that, and they like the visualization and being able to provide that, I think, to the new generation. One of the people we're talking to here in one of our segments is the students at the Merchant Marine Academy, and to get them more tuned to what they have to look for, what they have to be cautious about, I think is a great opportunity. So the initial exercise being played are tabletop. We talked about that. How do you see the Coast Guard, Cyber Command, and AFCEA collaborating to move towards more real-time planning and exercises?
Yeah, so I think the tabletop example and doing a few of those or a command post exercise is a really good start. And then, I think beyond that there is a place for full-scale exercises. Now, in the cybersecurity industry right now, there are a number of full-scale exercises that get down to a level that has much more hands-on technology exercising activity, where operators are able to be on network and be transiting networks and handling simulated attacks. While I think that's important, and I think there's a lot of that exists already, where I really see the value of this particular idea is bringing together the various players in a port environment, in a city, what have you, to talk through the impacts of this type of an event, the second and third order effects, the cooperation that occurs, and then what are the resources that are available and can be brought to bear. And so I think that's kind of number one benefit is bringing everyone together. And then again, back to kind of AFCEA's core role and value that I see is, if these are done in cooperation with AFCEA events and conferences, then you have members of the tech industry that provide the tools that many of these companies use to secure their networks. And if they're in some way able to participate, there is an opportunity there, right, for the person, the company that is producing a tool or a service to engage with that local government entity or that company in the maritime industry to say, hey, there's an opportunity to discuss products and capabilities, and so certainly there's value there. I think oftentimes, we in government, we don't always know what's available out there. So the value of coming together with groups like that, or we get smarter about what type of technology is available, and clearly industry being there gets to see what are the needs of government entities and the industries they regulate. Do we have a product that maybe matches up, and there's an opportunity there for some synergy?
Absolutely, and I think you're right. That is one of the biggest advantages of AFCEA. We bring together government, we bring together industry, and we bring together education institutions all together. As a matter of fact, I'm working with a fellow who's doing cybersecurity grant work. He's the chief research security officer down at Texas A&M. We talked about this exercise thing, and we talked about bringing maybe something down to Houston. And as you know, or you may know, Texas A&M is actually kind of linked with the Texas government, because each of their departments are kind of like agencies within the state government. It's a very interesting model. But I find a lot of enthusiasm when I talk about this to other people. So I think this is something we're going to get a lot of cooperation and help with. So you mentioned you're rotating. and I got to modify the way I put my question, but obviously you're interested in pursuing this port exercise and championing that from your new position. And you mentioned the port captains all get together, captains of the port, I'm sorry. Do you guys, as operational commanders, do you guys get together and kind of do the same kind of thing? And is that something we can kind of facilitate or use to get this more across the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. So captains of the port do oversee exercising of security plans and safety plans in ports. I think where the potential lies is scope, the ability to bring together more players, more constituents, if you will. Again, maybe that piece where you bring in academia or you bring in industry to enrich the conversation, and then really, in AFCEA's case, and come as the departing Coast Guard Cyber Command to bring that technology and cybersecurity piece into those exercises. There are some ports that are doing that now. I would say it's a nascent effort, and there's an opportunity to really expand that. Again, I think we've seen some examples of either related exercises, what I saw in Atlanta, or related incidents, again, what we're seeing in Baltimore, that don't necessarily have a cyber nexus or a cyber component. But again, if we use our imagination, port disruption is something that absolutely is vulnerable to cyber threats. And I just think there's really an opportunity to bring people together to work on that. I fully will encourage captains of the port in my area of responsibility to enhance what they're doing to include the cyber vector, and certainly if there's an opportunity to work together with other agencies to scope that up and bring more attention to it, then we will look to do that.
Yeah, and you're going to be in Portsmouth, I think, right? And Virginia has I don't know if it's completely unique, but they have a very interesting port model, the Port of Virginia, which includes the rails and all of that. Actually, one of our alumni was very much involved with that, Sean Connaughton. It really brings in that flavor that you're talking about. It's not just the port has to worry about this, the trains have to worry about this. We need to start bringing this all together.
Not trying to corner the market for the Coast Guard, but just trying to make the point that I believe the marine transportation system and the ports are just a great example of how our entire supply chain and really our way of life is so interconnected that we need to look for opportunities to exercise that way. And I think, again, what I watched AFCEA support down in Atlanta, I think it would be really great to try that in a couple of large port complexes and then take some lessons from it, as you say.
And like I said, we're very excited to do that. So closing out, Cybersecurity TV, we're on here now. We attract a broad audience that spans government, industry, higher education, as we mentioned. And as part of the industry educational outreach program, we have a sister channel, Maritime TV. And we'll be providing access to this interview in an upcoming Digi-Mariner. So we're also trying to feed more digital understanding, more cybersecurity understanding into the very tight curriculum at the United States Merchant Marine Academy. We're also trying to reach out to some of the state schools, and we'd even be interested in having the Coast Guard Academy join in that. I think that would be an interesting collaboration with the students of those different schools. Some are pursuing to participate in our exercises. So, like I said, we have some students and even instructors and leaders in academia interested. As a matter of fact, I recently understand that, and I think you'll have responsibility of the Port of Wilmington. Is that correct? So UNC Wilmington just received a large grant for a maritime security program. So that would be interesting. Hopefully I'll get you in touch with and bring those people together. So please take the opportunity to speak to our midshipmen here. We have a broad audience, so we have a lot of current mariners that span from fellows of the 70s and 80s all the way down to guys and gals from to our recent graduates from 2023 and soon to be 2024. So let's talk to our maritime industry, but specifically to our midshipmen, and help them understand the criticality of understanding and playing in this focused physical and logical port security requirement.
Sure. So to us more seasoned mariners, we're certainly hearing this a lot, and why we are not necessarily the digital natives that the midshipmen are. We increasingly see the interconnectedness of the marine transportation system and the maritime industry, the increasing use of automation, the increasing use of communications technologies, robotics. I mean, you name it, we can't get away from it. It brings the efficiency to that system that is needed to stay competitive, while it increases the vulnerability to cyber threats. To the midshipmen, to the cadets, to all of those that are developing leaders and going to be entering into service and into this industry, it is absolutely no surprise to them that we need to really increase our vigilance and our expertise and really our cooperation to be able to get after these threats. This is a team sport. Again, you keep hearing me go back to the industry, the government agencies, the local government, you name it, everybody has to be together on this. And I think exercises, again, are just a great opportunity to bring people together to do that. But again, I would just encourage particularly the midshipmen to, I know you're getting exposure to this in your studies, but ask a lot of questions, take advantage of opportunities to don't leave your training without an appreciation for this piece, that cyber piece, the cybersecurity of not only the networks and the information systems we use, but the operational technologies that you find aboard ship and at the waterfront, because they are in the crosshairs when it comes to these threats that I talked about, be they financial actors, be they activists, or be they nation-state actors, and you will be, on the front lines, really, of making sure that bad actors, be they kind of motivated for their own reasons, or adversarial states that are looking to gain advantage, protecting against that, and potentially responding if something bad happens. So, yes, tons of opportunity. Exercises are a great way to bring people together. There's more than enough work to specialize in this area. Last plug, in the Coast Guard, there's a reason that a human resource specialist was put in command of Coast Guard Cyber Command 2 years ago, and that was because our workforce in CG Cyber is just burgeoning, whether it be officers increasingly specializing in cyber, a new enlisted rating of cyber specialists that work in that profession their whole career, warrant officers in this specialty, or civilians who we are, that part of our workforce where we are growing. We've increased the size of our reserve. We've even increased the size of the volunteer arm of the Coast Guard Auxiliary in cyberspace. So tons of opportunity in the Coast Guard as well. You cannot go wrong if you are spending some of your time and focus in cyber, and certainly there's lots of opportunity, whether it's in the Merchant Marine, the Coast Guard, across government industry. Again, plenty of work to do, and I look forward to seeing everybody out there on the water.
And I'll add a couple things. One, I'm sure that we commission into the U.S. Coast Guard quite a number of graduates every year, and I think they make great Coast Guard officers.
Agreed.
And the other thing I would just caveat is learn the technology, understand its benefits, but also understand that you may need to fall back on shooting stars and doing things the old-fashioned way, because, one of the things people try to disrupt is navigational aids, GPS and stuff like that. So I bring back a comment from the school up in Baltimore, my tags. One of the instructors told me the hardest thing we do is having the young sailors, the young officers, pull their head out of the electronics and just look out the window.
Yeah, another lesson we've taken from what just occurred in Baltimore is, not necessarily, that's a great point about, navigation. We may not always have the tools, but what we've seen is the marine transportation system adapt by rerouting shipping and working relationships with different companies. I mean, so this goes, everything from whether it's satellite navigation versus celestial navigation to, are we following the plan and using the port facilities and the places we're used to, or do we have to be adaptable and resilient? And that supply chain, again, having to kind of be flexible and agile. And I think we will all continue to see that in our careers. So good luck.
Well, Admiral Vann, thank you very much. This was a great interview. We really appreciate your
Dan,
time.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for joining us again on Cybersecurity TV. This was an excellent presentation, and I can't wait to show it in front of the midshipmen at the Academy as well. That's all we have today, and we look forward to our next segment of Thought Leadership on Cybersecurity TV.
Greetings. I'm Colonel Mike Black, United States Air Force retired, Vice President Defense at AFCEA International. AFCEA is the association for professionals in the IT, cyber, intelligence, and global security communities who want to serve those who serve. We develop networking and educational opportunities to deepen the collaboration across the government, military, industry, and academia, and continue to explore how technology impacts global security. The digital domain is at the center of our core mission, and the threats posed to the United States and our allies and partners underscore the importance of AFCEA's role and mission. We're comprised of nearly 1,600 corporate members that join to increase visibility and interact with key government customers, and our 30,000 individual members for whom membership provides the opportunities to lead, learn, and give back to your respective communities. AFCEA also focuses on STEM education. Our education foundation and our global chapters have supported STEM for more than 4 decades, awarding $2 million a year in student and teacher scholarships and teaching tools. Our programs reflect our membership in our IDEA program, or Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. And this lets us help advance careers through leadership development, education, events, mentor support, and networking. Our members get out of AFCEA what you put in. And the more you expect from your professional association, the more you get. We take pride in upholding the highest ethical standards in support of those who respond, protect, secure, and serve. Our members deserve nothing less. If you're not a member of AFCEA, join and bring others into the fold. Get involved. Get involved as a volunteer, as a chapter leader, as a mentor, as an advocate for our mission and our mission partners. Thank you.